And as a US citizen, all my life, I've grown up with the story about Israel and Israel's founding. And the Palestinians have been, if you hear about them at all, they're terrorists or they're demonized, right? And yeah, so that's what brought me to the West Bank.
Would you even consider going to the West Bank right now? I mean, knowing what's happening there. When violent settlers, basically kids, teenagers, are running around with military grade weapons Ben Gvir has handed to them, storming villages, torching olive trees, shooting livestock, burning homes completely to the ground. You've seen the videos. Gangs of them, laughing, taking selfies while they beat up farmers, old men, women, anyone who dares to stand in their way. Now, imagine you're going there alone, as a woman, unarmed. Cara MariAnna did exactly that, twice. And she's going back coming spring. But this story, it's not just about Palestine or the West Bank or another foreigner visiting a conflict zone to document injustice. It's about something deeper. It's about endurance. It's about a woman who's virtually survived her own private battle and somehow found the strength to step into another one. And no, she's not chasing headlines or trying to play hero. She's there because she believes the people of Palestine deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be remembered. And in a world that keeps scrolling past their pain, she stopped, she looked, and she decided to speak. So if this kind of story speaks to you, if you're tired of the noise, the slogans, the recycled headlines, then come find me on Substack. That's where I try to slow things down. That's where I look beyond the headlines, the PR spin, the politics, and dig into what's actually shaping our world. The patterns, the motives, the people behind the curtain. And I do so through my lens as behavior analyst. It's not always comfortable reading, I grant you that, but it's honest. And if you still believe that the truth deserves more than a 15-second TikTok post, that it still matters, then that's where you find it. Marianne, Cara, what a pleasure having you. How are you?
Uh, I'm fine, thank you. And it's a delight to be here with you.
Likewise. To give the viewers a little bit of context, I interviewed your husband yesterday, no, not yesterday, last week,
Hmm.
Patrick Lawrence,
Hmm.
and we had a really engaging conversation. So we're already editing this thing, so I have him completely in my mind. And during the interview, very nonchalantly mentioned, by the way, my wife was in the West Bank and she gets a lot of texts. I said, huh? My ears go up. Wife, West Bank, what's going on here? So that's the context. And thanks to your husband, we are here today talking.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Now, Cara, I'm not sure where to start. So you sent me quite some information, and for reasons that I can explain later, I would be inclined to follow the names that you sent me,
Mm.
starting with Samia. I mean, this
Mm.
could be a concept for this interview. We go through the persons, the 4 or 5 persons you have
Right.
sent me, and you tell us what's the background. Yeah.
Mm.
But I would suggest first you have to tell us how you came to those names.
Ah, well, maybe I should tell you first how I came to go to the West Bank. Uh,
That's what I meant. Yeah.
yeah, and this was I will remember very clearly. It was February, and I was actually visiting my parents in the West Coast of the United States, sitting in their guest bedroom. And by that point, the genocide had been in Gaza had been going on for several months. And I, like other people, could see right away in the early weeks that this was indeed a genocide. And the Zionist state had been herding people down to Rafah, saying that this was going to be a safe zone. And then it became apparent in January that they were going to start bombing. And at that point, I decided, as a US citizen, uh, um, feeling responsible, being responsible, my government being responsible for this genocide, providing the weapons, providing even military intelligence, providing support, political, diplomatic, that I wanted to be at Rafah. I knew I couldn't get in, and my intention was not to get in, but it was to be there, at least on the Egyptian side, to witness as the bombing started. I felt it was imperative. And then I spent about a week and realized pretty quickly that that was not going to be possible. And that was when I decided to go to the West Bank. And I decided that because how is a genocide made possible? It's made possible when people are demonized, right? And the people are demonized when they're erased and they're not visible. And as a US citizen, all my life, I've grown up with the story about Israel and Israel's founding. And the Palestinians have been, if you hear about them at all, they're terrorists or they're demonized, right? And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what brought me. That's what brought me to the West Bank. And I had to launch a GoFundMe campaign. People were generous. I had all the funding I needed within a week. And very quickly, by April, I was in the West Bank. I got Samia's name from the international lawyer, John Whitbeck, um, who Patrick knew. So it was the fortunate contact. And she was the first person I met. I got Mazin Kimsia's name, who's in Bethlehem, and we'll talk about him later, from another contact. And those were the only two prearranged contacts I had. And so I went really cold and feeling like I tell people, if I believed in God, I would have said I had a calling to go. So I went. And
This
some,
is quite, if I may, this is quite incredible because, I mean, first of all, you're a woman.
Mhm,
Then there was no prior planning. It was quite a spontaneous decision to go
correct.
in. Now, knowing what's all going on in the West Bank, it's safe to say it's not a safe environment for anyone going in, especially for a woman, right?
Mm.
So that puts you on par. And I just spoke about him. There's a journalist that your husband knows, Patrick Barb.
Oh, yeah.
He went into Ukraine and Russia, yeah, on
Hmm.
both sides.
Hmm.
Also completely on his own,
Hmm.
without big organization, same as you. You had also nobody behind you. The
Hmm.
risk is 100% on your shoulders. Yeah, there's no rescue parachute to get you out there. So I
Yeah.
have to. I'm not sure congratulation is the right word. Yeah, but I have to, chapeau for your courage.
Uh, People mention that, but you know, there have been a couple points in my life, and this was one of them, when I realized actually what brought me to the West Bank in part was decades of failure on my part, decades of failure to question the narrative that I had grown up with. Decades of sort of knowing about the Palestinian issue. And I've been on the street, in a protest, yes, but really not being a responsible US citizen or responsible global citizen. And I'm not a young woman. And, I do have the situation of not having children or family. So for me, there was just, yeah, I didn't have a choice. It was a choiceless kind of thing.
Nevertheless, I think it took a lot of courage, right? And we should not forget to mention you're planning to go again in a
Yes, I am.
couple. Yes.
Yes, I am. Yes. I'm doing, I had hoped to be there right now, but life intervened. And so in the meantime, I'm actually studying Arabic in preparation. So I hope to go again. My plans are to go in spring. Yeah.
Okay. Do you do some kind of crowdfunding for that trip?
I may need to. Yeah, I may need to again.
Okay. So if
Yeah.
people would like to contribute, I mean, what would be the best way of doing so?
I have That's a good question. I should have been prepared for this. I have my original GoFundMe funding is still up on GoFundMe, so I could send a link to you, and people
You
could.
sent
That
me a
would,
link.
yeah,
Yes, you sent me a link, and I will put the link in the description of this interview.
fantastic because it's
Yeah,
just a continuation of that
yeah,
original project. Yeah.
yeah. When will you go?
February, I hope, but I need to be in contact with friends and figure out when Ramadan is happening and what it means to travel there during
Yeah.
Ramadan.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask why February? Why specifically February?
Just because it starts to warm up. Winter can be quite cold there, and I want to get there as soon as possible because it will have been. It will be by that point. It will have been over a year since I was last there, and it's possible. I hope to spend 3 months in the West Bank next year, and I may split it between spring and
Mm.
fall, and be there for the olive harvest season or what's left of it.
Yeah, that's also something. So how long were you in 2024? How long were you there?
The first trip I was there for 4 weeks. The
Yeah.
second trip I was there for 6. And I do have to admit, it is difficult. It is wearing. It's not an easy place to visit, though. I actually encourage anyone who can go, um, understanding the risks involved, to go because it's also uh, uh, words sort of fail me. The land is beautiful. I've fallen in love with Palestine, and they welcome internationals to be there. And there are certainly organizations that one can travel there with or meet up there that provide, for example, protective presence during olive harvest season and just in general protective presence. So,
Sorry, can you describe what do you mean or define protective presence? What does it
um,
entail?
right. The idea is that people from the internationals and also Israeli Jews will also provide protective presence. So during olive harvest season, for example, Palestinians are often prevented by settlers backed by the occupation forces from accessing their land, or will, if they are able to access and start picking, they will disrupt the process of picking, or they will be shot at. So by having internationals there, by having Israeli Jews there, that can enable helping with the olive harvesting, that can enable that to happen. And Palestinians are extremely dependent upon olives, not just as a food source, a staple, the olives and the oil, but as an economic source of income as well. So yeah. And also I have videos of internationals protecting families who have been um, being forced from their land as well.
Talking about the West Bank, could you, give us a little bit an impression how let's say if you can say the word in ordinary life in the West Bank for a Palestinian or for an outsider on the side of the Palestinians is starting already to get in. I know from our email conversation you went in via Jordan, but maybe you start give us a little bit of an impression because for outsiders, since the information is quite restricted, but on a pure personal level. So how is it there?
You mean life for Palestinians in the West Bank? What is
Not
day-to-day
only
life
not
like?
only not only Palestinians, but also how was it for you? It starts already with the border crossing. Then,
Oh,
how are you being treated by not only the settlers, but also by the Israelis there? So how does that affect the Palestinians who are with you and these kind of things? Yeah.
right. Wow, that's a big question. Um, yeah, going through, I went through Ben Gurion Airport the first time. And I found it so unpleasant. I was grilled, really grilled a lot. I flew. from Zurich, and I was grilled just trying to get out of Zurich, just before I boarded the airplane.
Who
And
grilled you? Who grilled you?
security at the airport, and in
Swiss.
fact, yeah,
Swiss.
I'm not sure whether it was Swiss secure. I don't know who it was. It was never clear. And the other thing is that that's the only airline that had armed guards in an airport. Frankly, I was outraged by it, you know. But
Which airline was that?
El, Air All. It
El
was,
Al. That's the Israeli. Yeah, but for
yeah,
them that's normal. For them that's normal. Yeah.
yeah, right. So the second time, as you know, I went through Jordan and then went over the uh, King Hussein Bridge, or the LNB Bridge, and yeah, it takes hours to get over the bridge. I was uh, Pal Palestinians have a particular card, so I could watch Palestinians going in. They have to be checked. Everyone has to be checked, but they seem to enter with relative ease that day. Now, there are days the bridge is shut down, right? If an incident happens. But I was pulled aside along with some other Palestinians, and I sat for hours waiting. Who knows what they were doing? It seems to be games that are being played, right? You can go in on what's called a VIP. You pay more money and then it's all handled for you. But I chose to go in, like, I wanted to see what was the experience for Palestinians going in. Um, and I'm a US citizen. I'm not used to being treated ways that a person is treated. And I have to watch my temper, because my temper is to, you know, say what's on my mind.
Poor
And
Patrick. Poor Patrick.
yeah, no, exactly right. Yeah. Poor Patrick. And he'll like to hear that. So, but for example, they check your phone. I had to prove that I had reservations at a hostel. I had to show them that I had the reservations. I had to show them my return ticket. They want to know, why was I there? I'm visiting friends. How did you meet these people? Who are these people? And then this is why are you traveling here? You know, and constantly repeated again and again and again. And then
And
and then
this is
yeah,
coming from Israelis. So the
yeah. This is
Israelis,
all Israelis. This
yeah,
is all Israelis,
yeah,
and I
in
find
in Palestine. So that's to be clear, Israelis in Palestine, not in
yeah,
Israel.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I had the most interesting incident in the city of Hebron, or Al Khalil. There is an Israeli settlement right in the middle of the city, in the old city, and it's just a terrible situation for the Palestinian residents of Hebron, and for the Palestinian people who live within that settlement area, going in and out of checkpoints all the time. So I was with someone who said, I can't enter, but you can enter. So I went through that checkpoint, and now I subsequently learned they have a camera pointing down the street that is monitoring you, but this camera is also a gun. It's also a weapon.
Yeah,
It can shoot at
yeah,
anybody, right? I
yeah.
didn't know that. And so I walked in and they were stunned. They said, "Where did you come from?" I didn't know what they meant. And eventually I said, "Well, I came from the United States." "Yeah, but where did you just come from?" I said, "Well, I flew in through Ben Gvir." "Yeah, but where did you just come from?" Finally, I pointed into the Arab side, and I said, "Well, I was just over there." And they said, "That's dangerous over there. That's dangerous." And it was the first time I really understood the extent of fear that Israeli Jews have. And I say Israeli Jews because there are 20% of Israelis who are not Jewish, that they're terrified. They're young, they're terrified, they're armed, they're arrogant. The arrogance is remarkable.
Amnesty International wrote a report called Automated Apartheid, which describes those. They're not only cameras with guns, they're linked to artificial intelligence and
Right?
background system, Wolfpack Red and Wolfpack Blue. It's a whole story. Yeah,
Yikes. Yeah, I learn new things every day. I'm writing a well, Wolfpack written. Okay. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. When I got out, when I left the West Bank on my second trip, no, first trip, that's right, because I had to fly back out of Ben Gurion on my first trip, I was stopped and, my face was recorded and everything.
You also said they took they checked your phone. Does
Yeah.
that mean you had to give them the phone and they actually copied everything that's on your phone?
No,
Was it
I was fortunate this time. I had to show them and they took it and sort of summed through, but they will take your phone and they will take, also, they are lost a lot of the, what I want to say, reservation that they had with internationals. Internationals are more and more being treated more like Palestinians are being
hostile?
treated. Yeah, it
Hostiles, yeah.
doesn't necessarily protect you that you're an international. Some of my contacts who provide me with photographic and video documentation, for example, as a raid is going on in a refugee camp, it's become very dangerous. If they get caught, they're seen doing something, they can be shot at. And if not shot at, they will raid the home. And raiding a home means ransacking a home. It means tearing things off the wall, breaking things, and then they will and then if they get your phone and they find anything on it that they don't like, you know, you're facing arrest, if not worse. And arrest always comes with, usually often comes with being beaten as well. So,
Yeah. A graphic dystopian situation. I mean, in a sane world, if you look at this from objectively from the outside, in a sane world, this should not be allowed to happen. And even worse, in a sane world, those Western politicians who do some mental, I don't know, caprioles in order to justify all of that.
right.
Yeah, and to justify the support, the billions of dollars, the I don't know how many weapons, and it's not a one-way street, huh? It's also the high-tech stuff that comes out of Israel under the predicate battle tested, because
Right.
all the rest of those also dictatorish inclined leaders that we are getting left and right, starting with the US, are
Mhm.
happy to have them, right?
Right, right. Well, I look at Gaza as, many people have said, and I'm so terrible at names, but that Palestinian American writer, Susan Abdallah, you know who I'm talking about? Mm. And many people have said Gaza is the testing ground. It's the testing
Yeah.
ground. And this is not going to be an isolated event. We are seeing a template of how power is going to be exerted against any population, whether it's outside of a nation or even within a nation,
Yeah.
that is a threat to power.
Exactly, and we're seeing this trend already globally. The militarization of the police, right? I mean, look at the
Yeah.
student protests in America. Again, coupled with this high-tech intelligence that comes from the systems which are developed by I don't know how many startups, which have its source in the military unit, Israeli military unit called
That's right.
8200. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Um, yeah,
Back to Gaza, back to your experience in Gaza. So you cross the bridge.
not
You then
Gaza,
what?
the West Bank, not Gaza, the West Bank. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, my
Yeah.
mind. In the West Bank. So how did you conduct or get connect with your first contact, or how did that work out?
Well, I spent about 5 days in Old Jerusalem. So with Samia, it was an email, and she sent a cab to get me, and that was easy. Um, and I spent a lovely couple of hours in her home, and it happened to be Passover when I was there, which was an interesting thing to be in Jerusalem during Passover. But when finally went into the West Bank, and I have to tell you, Thomas, I mean, fools, I guess, right? Fools are, have some sort of special, I don't know, angel or something, right? Because uh, every time I was told where to take a bus, and that, invariably I was either in the wrong place or the number I was given never showed up. But And that's what happened. I left Old Jerusalem, lugging my suitcase, went down to a bus stop and immediately was lost. And spoke to a woman who said, I'll help you get in, and that's where she was headed towards Bethlehem, although she got off before I did. But I went with her. We got off of the bus. We passed into the West Bank. There's no problem at that point with security going in. That's not an issue. It's trying to get back into the 48 lands that is the problem. Um, and she got off the bus and got me into a cab, and I had an appointment that morning to go to the Institute, the Palestine Institute of Biodiversity and Sustainability, and where Mazin Kimsia is the director. Now, he was traveling out of country then, and it wasn't until my second visit that I got to meet with him. But so I got to tour that institute, doing marvelous work environmentally, educating children. They have a historical museum of natural history, and they're building a new museum. One of the things that is remarkable to me about Palestinians is what they're able to accomplish. It's like they build from nothing, the not just resilience, but the creativity that is demanded from human beings when they are living in incredibly difficult situations. It brings out it's people are forced to be very creative in the way they problem solve, in the way they build institutions and community and keep community together and going. And yeah, it's quite impressive.
One comment to Samia. So let me just see. Village in Birse. Yeah. So Samia
Yeah,
is the sister of Rima Tarasi. And Rima
yes,
Tarasi I interviewed a couple of weeks ago.
I
Yeah.
know. I
So
watched it.
how small is the world? How
I
is
know.
that possible?
I know. I
Yeah.
know. It's actually remarkable. And of course, I only met Rima thanks to her sister Samia. But yeah, Samia's story is interesting. Now, Rima, as you know, was actually out of Palestine and in university in Beirut when the Nakba really got
Yeah.
underway.
Yeah.
But Samia, being a little bit younger, was in Brazil and going to school there. Her family had left Jerusalem. I'm not quite sure why. Well, she was in school, but maybe because they perceived that problems were coming. And do you want me to tell the story? So it's a hot July day, and she's sitting under the shade of an olive tree reading a book. And she looks up and sees a long line of people coming towards the village. And she doesn't know what she's seeing. And it turns out these are some of the refugees from two villages that have just been ethnically cleansed and in which massacres happened. And my pronunciation is bad, but these are the villages of Lod and Ramla. And they were it's now known as, I think, the Lod Death March. It was, a smaller version of the Trail of Tears in the United States. They were walking for days in the July heat without food or water. They had been, they had to leave at gunpoint. They could bring nothing with them. The women were stripped of jewelry, and she tells the story about how her aunt, who was had started this school, just opened the school, opened the kitchen, opened the larders, and started feeding people.
Yeah, incredible story.
Mhm.
It is very similar to the story that two survivors of the attacks in Tantura told me. So I interviewed a lady, also 90 plus year old lady. She died just 3, 4 weeks ago in Amman.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so I
just
was it.
started watching that. I just started
Yeah,
watching that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Faise. Yeah, she died. And her male relative who lived in Germany just died like 10 days ago or something. Yeah.
Oh, well,
So,
thank goodness you got those interviews too. I
yeah,
mean, I'm
yeah,
sorry about
yeah. So very briefly, so it's what you just said is so eerily similar to
Mm,
what they told me. So
yeah.
the Israelis did different things to men and women there.
Mm,
Yeah, and the second interview from the male family member, I have not dared to publish it because it contains so graphic, so absolute
oh, really?
horrifying graphic things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but basically it's the same story. They were stripped of everything. First of
Hmm.
all, gunpoints. They had
Yeah.
literally minutes.
That's right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Faise, which whose
Yeah.
interview you saw, she didn't even have shoes on. There was no time to put the shoes on. Yeah. Then
Yeah.
they rounded them all up. They took all the jewelry. They had to get the babies out of whatever they were in because some women tried to hide some jewelry in there.
Yeah.
So unbelievable, unbelievable. Yeah, and then
Eh,
not even talking about the massacres that you also mentioned. Yeah,
that's right.
so
That's right.
it's
And her family, I've watched only about a quarter of that interview. Her father was a lawyer. They were, you know,
yeah,
educated family, middle
yeah,
class, upper middle class family.
yeah.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the last house remaining from Tantura, remaining till today, the ruins, is
Mhm.
from that family.
Really?
It's from that family, and their American Palestinian American niece, which I'm in contact with, was able to go once in her life into Israel, sitting on the stairs of this ruined house. And then when I was in Germany, I showed this to the older gentleman.
Hmm.
And I can tell you one thing: time does not heal wounds.
That's right.
This gentleman was sitting at the table and he was just crying in silence. It was incredibly moving.
Mhm.
Incredible. Yeah.
Mhm.
But back to your story.
Well, I mean, I mean, none of this is easy because there are levels of violence that just when you think you've heard it all, or just, of course, this is so, just when you think you've seen it all, no, there's yet another layer. There's no, there's and multi-generational trauma. I had the fortune of speaking with. I met a man at a university in Bethlehem, Dar al Kalima, which is a wonderful school. It's a school of art and design. That he was the head of the art therapy program. Now, again, this was almost a year ago now. It would have been in November, right, of 2024. And already they were working with people in their colleagues in Gaza doing art therapy with children there, and developing new, I'm not sure, therapeutic modalities because Western concepts or therapeutic approaches cannot address the Palestinian experience, right? So they're having to develop, a whole way of understanding, talking about, teaching about, and treating the trauma and the Palestinian experience. It's unique to the people of Palestine. They just scoff at the idea of PTSD post. Their trauma is continuous, right?
Continuous, to be specific, since 1948. That's what they mean.
That's
Yeah,
right. And even
yeah,
before,
yeah,
right? Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. That's
yeah.
right.
So again, I'm still a little bit curious about your actual experience in Gaza. So you're now there. So how is your interaction with both the settlers and the military?
Well, I didn't have, let's see, did I? I have not had any interaction with settlers, and I have my only interaction with military would be the going through the checkpoints. So my closest interaction was at the check was what the one I already described. I mean, yes, going past checkpoints in cars, I would see them, and for the moment that you go through the checkpoint, you got a gun pointed right at you, right at you. Now, settlers, I've been very fortunate because settlers are a whole other, they're just rabid. They're extremely dangerous because they're fanatical, very fanatical, and they know they have the backing of the military, and they know they have the backing of the government. So there's just no very, very few sort of breaks on their behavior. Again, I have contacts who send me, and I can get on various channels and see videos of settlers interacting with Palestinians, or like I reported a few weeks ago on the ethnic cleansing of the Bedouin community of Deir Allah in the Hebron Governorate. Near a village called Kisan, and I've seen videos of raids where you'll have 20, 30 or more settlers, descending in a small Bedouin community, throwing rocks. At least on one of the raids, the IOF fired into the village to scare all of the villagers in their houses so that they can't defend themselves during a raid. And during that raid, the settlers attacked an animal shed where young sheep and or goats, and killed, I don't know, I saw the video, I think I counted at least 8 dead baby animals. Um, and also in the weeks leading up to the final evacuation of that village, in the middle of the night, settlers had thrown Molotov cocktails into a house where the family had been sleeping. So the violence is unchecked. It's escalating because we've seen the impunity in Gaza. So that same impunity is carried over into the West Bank. It's an ethnic cleansing happening in the West Bank. I was looking again at the definition, the legal definition of genocide, of which ethnic cleansing is a component. I'm not a lawyer, but I think one could argue that what is happening in the West Bank, and I have seen people, respectable people saying this, it is a continuation of the genocide in Gaza. Because
It's
the intent is to empty the land, and the intent is to ethnically cleanse. It is to, get rid of this population of people.
yeah. I quoted this a couple of times, and I always say a note of caution. I thought it was Professor Omar Bartov who told it to me, but I'm not, and I had so many interviews. So, yeah, but he said there is a linear progression into, let's say, genocide. Yeah, first you dehumanize the population, which we clearly see. Then you execute ethnic cleansing, which we see both in Gaza and the West Bank. And then, if you can't get rid of them, you kill them. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
right.
I know it's very black and white, but we are definitely seeing this trajectory,
Yes,
right?
yes, the trajectory is
Yeah.
is underway, and in the West Bank, this is why. So my initial project, as I conceived it, before I actually left for Palestine, is called Palestinian Voices, right? The idea was to make or enable Palestinian voices to be heard in the West, right? To help make visible people who have been rendered invisible, nearly invisible within my own country. And
Not,
then,
sorry, not even in your country. I have a number of prominent Israelis on my channel who told me in person and being surprised themselves that they were around 40, 45 before they met the first
yeah,
real Palestinian in their whole life. And they're living in Israel.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
this is apartheid. This is apartheid.
yeah.
That is the very nature of apartheid, right? Yeah. Yeah, because you meet people and what happens, you discover that they're humans just like you. And so we must make sure we don't meet. We must make sure that we indoctrinate. The indoctrination, of Israeli children is a form of child abuse. And I don't know how. You have generations now. And as we know, the younger generations are even more racist. The younger generations of Israeli Jews are even more racist and even more violent, right?
More indoctrinated.
More
More indoctrinated.
indoctrinated.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a little story in that connection. I interviewed Professor Nurit Peled El Hanan.
yeah.
Yeah, she's the sister of Miko Peled. But
Hmm.
what makes this whole family interesting is that, first of all, their grandfather was a co-signatory of the Israel's Charter of Independence, and their father was a famous general in the 1967 war.
Hmm.
Now, after the war was won in 1967, he then said, "Okay, now we won. Now we need peace," which is why they sidelined him. But that's not the story I want to tell. Nurit and her husband lost a 14-year-old daughter to a suicide bomber in, I believe it was Jerusalem. Yeah, and instead of turning to hate, that turned to understanding. It's an incredible story. So
Mhm.
in addition to Miko Peled and Nurit Peled, I also interviewed her husband, because whilst
Oh,
Nurit Peled told me there's one topic I will not discuss with you, that's my personal tragedy, her husband does. Now, there is I think it was an Irish writer who wrote a book which I have behind me. The Pope read the book. It's translated in I don't know how many languages. The Pope read the book, and Nuri told me this. Yeah, so the Pope invited my husband twice, and I
oh,
said, so when he's going? He was already. Yeah. So what I want to say with this is there in the book that the story of two fathers is being told. The
yeah.
father of the daughter of Nurit Pelet El Hanan, and the Palestinian father who lost his 11, 12-year-old daughter to a sniper. Yeah, she
Ah,
just came out of a candy store and got headshot by Israeli sniper,
mhm.
18, 19 years old. Yeah. Now those two gentlemen, they're now touring the world and give speeches. Yeah. But in this book, you find the description how those two had to kind of come closer to each other, because if I remember correctly, also the Israeli father had not really had contact with Palestinians to that time. Yeah. So by the way, I recommend the book. Unfortunately, I don't have the title now in my mind. I will put it in the description. It's
Yeah.
a different type of book, I promise you. Yeah,
Mhm.
the whole
Mhm.
setup. So it's very moving. Anyway, I just wanted to say apartheid, separation, dehumanization,
That's
not
right.
understanding the other, etc., etc. I
Mhm.
think this is what drives this whole thing.
Mhm. And a curious projection. I mean, Israelis are always projecting onto Palestinians, like, well, right, even as part of Trump and Netanyahu's 20-point peace plan, right? That that Palestinian school books are going to be vetted in some way to be stripped of anti-Semitic content or something. I'm telling you, the people I've been around, I don't see the hatred on the Palestinian side. Now, I've only been twice, I'm sure there's plenty of it. And part of the problem is one of the very unfortunate things, too, is that the genocide now, when I went the first time, the genocide was, what, 5 months underway or something, right? And people still expressed hope. People have lost hope in Palestine. And people, you know, people no longer believe in peace. They no longer believe peace is possible with Israel. Israel's not interested in peace. It's never been interested in peace.
That's
It's
clear.
it's
That's clear.
violated the ceasefire with Lebanon over 1,000 times now. Is the last I heard. And how do you ask a people who've been genocided to live in peace side by side with the people who committed genocide against them? How does that happen?
I would say if you look at the bigger picture, yeah, so never say never. We have seen,
Mhm.
from the Japanese to the Germans to, I mean, you know, it's difficult, but it has to be fair. Yeah, and even the strive, there is no whatsoever attempt to include any kind of justice or fairness. Without that, this is not going to happen.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
You have to have accountability. Those who are guilty of crimes against humanity, of genocide, of war crimes, have to be brought to trial. You have to have the component of justice, right? You have to have accountability. You have to have reparations. You have to have some process like South Africa went through. And South Africa's example is nothing like this one. Now, of
Nelson Mandela said so himself. He
yeah,
said Israel apartheid is worse
yeah,
than in South Africa, because in
right,
South Africa they didn't want to kill the blacks, they wanted to exploit them. In
right.
Israel, they want to get rid
To
of them.
kill them. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Mm.
So not very rosy perspectives for your next trip to the West Bank in a couple of months.
For me, I understand that the next trip in a couple of months is about witnessing and recording,
Which makes you a
documenting.
target. Which makes you a target.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with Patrick in preparation for talking with you and said, how much do I not want to say so that when I can get in? And of course, I'm not a journalist. I wasn't trained as a journalist. I have an ability to write, so I'm a writer. I'm just doing what I
There is
feel is,
no distinction.
yeah,
You are someone who brings out the truth. Yeah. And
yeah.
uh, I, I need to get my facts straight. So I know there are more than 200 journalists killed.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just not sure. Is this now the number only for Gaza, or is it also the number including the West Bank? I thought it was only in Gaza,
It's
almost
only in
200.
Gaza. It's
Yeah.
only in Gaza.
So basically,
Yes.
they're shooting at anyone with a camera. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
And shooting
that's
to
right.
kill. Shooting to
That's
kill.
no,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's why I said, I had a contact in a refugee camp in one of the refugee camps in the governorate of Ramallah who texted me and said, I can't do this anymore. It's too dangerous. It's just too dangerous.
Completely understand.
Hmm.
Yeah. And nevertheless, you go.
Yeah, because what does my life mean otherwise? This is a what you don't. I spent 10 years disabled. I struggled with a serious illness for 15 years, 10 of which I was disabled, and I lived with my parents. And that was roughly from age 50 to age 60. And
Wow.
and for 6 years, I needed to use a wheelchair outside of the home. So once I was able to recover, this is me, maybe I'm sharing too much with your audience now, making meaning of a life, right? And I had an eighth grade teacher. She was a English teacher, and she had been a court stenographer in the Nuremberg war trials. And for 2 weeks out of every year, she focused on the history of the Holocaust, right? And so I saw the filming films, the black and white films of the camps when the Allied troops went into the camps. I took that very much as an eighth grader would to heart. And when I realized my country's participating in a genocide that can only happen because of the support of my country could have ended it at any time, could have made sure it never started. I, you know, I, I'm, Jonathan Cook just wrote a piece recently about the grief that he feels and stuff. I mean, my life has been forever changed by this genocide.
That speaks very much for you. The slogan, what they always said, never again. Yeah, it's such a cynical twist,
Mm,
because they mean never again for them,
right,
but anywhere else it doesn't matter.
right, right. And Palestine is a reckoning for the people of the West, in particular for the United States. I mean, settler colonial nation, right? And what I didn't expect and should have, it's my own naivete, that going to Palestine, I would be looking at my own history, my own biography in a way, right? And I don't think the West is going to manage it, but my own feeling is that if the West doesn't, Palestine is like the last chance for the West to redeem itself, right? After 500 years of colonial exploitation, of land theft, in my own country, the enslavement of millions of people, of genocide. How do you make something good out of a nation that is founded on slavery and genocide? I'm a Buddhist. It's so the concept that you could have a healthy fruit out of a seed that's so rotten. Now I'm getting very personal here in my own personal thinking.
But it's very true. So we are at the tail end. I have a slightly different take on it. Yeah. So we are absolutely right. We are on the tail end of 500-600 years of Western domination. You could also say enlightenment in quotation marks.
Hmm.
Yeah. But instead of kind of a peaceful transformation, what I'm seeing is the opposite. Any possible means is used to hold on to this supremacy.
Yeah.
And that's why I foresee this will end in a clash. And interestingly, if you talk about clash, we have in America, you have like Noam Chomsky told me, you have about 60 million or so Christian fundamentalists. This
Yeah.
is not one block, but you have about 60 million people reading this kind of literature. Now, in Israel, you have also these kind of fundamentalists who believe that they have to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque so that their Messiah can come back. And the
Right.
Christian fundamentalists in the US, they believe the other way around, that there has to come this clash of civilization so that their Messiah comes back. Yeah, and Noam Chomsky said, and I connect those two. Noam Chomsky said the very existence of Israel is the greatest sign of anti-Semitism. So when he said this, I had to, oh, wait a second. Yeah, of course, nobody else wanted them. The Christian fundamentalists in the US do not want to have the Jews in Israel, in America, which
That's
is
right.
why they support them in Israel.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
both those groups, they have kind of a united goal in order to get their respective Messiah back. And I mean, in the 21st century,
I
it
know.
it completely beats me.
Yeah.
I have, as a behavior analyst, I understand the psychological mechanisms that make this kind of thing possible. It's absolutely, if you look at it, if you look at it from this perspective, is absolutely understandable, not justifiable. Yeah, but on a rational basis, this is absolutely incredible. Yeah.
This touches on, you know, people in the West seem to forget that Palestinians are Christian and Muslim. It's not just a Muslim country. I'm going to call it a country. Um, and Christian Palestinians feel extraordinarily betrayed by Christianity, by the Christian churches, of the West, and they have been.
They're not being prosecuted in, I mean, there are videos on YouTube where Christians are,
Yeah.
there's not much difference anymore between Christians and Palestinians for
No.
the opposing party.
No, and in the old city of Jerusalem, which is really a world heritage site as far as I'm concerned, it's a treasure that belongs to the world, where these three faiths, originate from. Um, they're in the process of Judaizing the entire city, taking, Christian properties as well as Muslim properties, and yeah, I don't think we talk enough. I don't think we talk enough about Christian Zionism and the role of Christian Zionism and all of this. And I think the Christian Church needs to root out the poison of Zionism. I think it's a poison in the body of Christianity.
We need to be mindful not to fall in Netanyahu's trap and to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he propagates it wherever he can, and I completely understand, because if you conflate those two, then any legitimate critic against the state of Israel is automatically anti-Semitism, and of course, as an anti-Semite, you're kind
Right.
of disqualified. Yeah?
Right. Well,
So
we
we need
have
to be
this.
very mindful.
Yeah, and we have the situation in the United States now where we basically have a Zionist takeover. Our media is being taken over. We just had the purchasing of TikTok, CNN, Paramount. And our universities are being taken over. What is it? Rashid Khalidi, I just saw a text. No, Chris Hedges has just interviewed Rashid Khalidi, and he said, you cannot teach anymore about the Israel-Palestine, history in any university anymore, basically. Our Congress was long ago taken over. Our executive
Yeah.
branch, I don't know how deeply the judiciary may have been corrupted. We're losing academic freedom, freedom of speech.
Yeah, you just mentioned TikTok. So I did, I think, two pieces on Substack and one or two on YouTube
Mm,
about it, about this kind of hostile takeover of
Mm.
this is what it is, a
Mm.
hostile takeover of TikTok with one goal. And I have actually I
The
used
most
the clip
important purchase that is going on right
in
now
your
is
husband's interview when when Netanyahu
last
himself said, "What's the
Yeah.
number one target?"
TikTok.
TikTok.
So
TikTok. No.
TikTok, again, I said it in your husband's interview, has nothing to do with China, and I have a tech
That's right.
background, nothing whatsoever, but everything with information control. This is why they took it over. But now comes in Larry Ellison. He's the now again second richest man after Elon Musk. He was briefly the richest man. Now he's again second richest man. Oracle co-founder, and he's leading this conglomerate who takes over TikTok. And as a kind of cherry on top of the cake, his son David Ellison is now the CEO of this newly formed media conglomerate. Yeah,
Mhm.
who has I don't know how many companies under its own umbrella and controls not only the news or also entertainment. And people
Mhm.
people underestimate entertainment is also propaganda.
That's
Yeah,
right. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have to tell you, when I go to the West Bank, sometimes I've told Patrick, I said, I think I finally found the one place on the planet where I feel most comfortable. Um, and again, maybe it is because you would know this better than I, how human beings they can be broken. Many people can and are broken by violence and the trauma and the humiliation and the subjugation, the it's just constant humiliation, right? There isn't a person in the West Bank who doesn't know someone or have a family member who's been martyred or imprisoned, you know and yet there's the resilience, there's the creativity, there's the continuation. Just the survival of Palestine and Palestinians is, of course, the greatest threat to Israel, and the greatest thing they fear, and the greatest form of resistance. And there's something that about being in that kind of crucible where life is just stripped to the most basic things, and everything becomes very real. There isn't a lot of excess. You come into the United States, and I feel like I'm living in a strange, you know, Disney-esque, land of unreality. Everything is very real in Palestine, and people are very real. Um, I don't mean to romanticize. It's just like people anywhere else. There are the collaborators, there are those who are taking advantage of the situation, but there are ordinary people doing remarkable things and just raising their families and then just getting their olives picked.
As an outsider and from my own experience, and maybe that's something that you also experienced, if you are in a situation where, let's say, the likelihood that you live the next day goes down by 50%,
Mm,
the intensity of life
mm,
goes exponentially up. And this is a weird
mhm.
oxymoron,
Yeah.
But then I heard testimonies from soldiers from the Second World War who described this as so in later in life, described this as their best time in their life. I mean, when I heard this, I never could make sense of it. Yeah, but having had on a very small scale an experience where life suddenly is not as assured as in our countries, I
Mm.
experienced this kind of intensity of life, and it's the small things, not the big things. Yeah,
No, that's right.
myself. So maybe.
Well, I experienced that a long time ago. I had viral myocarditis. Again, I'm revealing a lot here. And so I know that it is if almost everything is more colorful, and you're living in a way that Buddhists talk about living in a way, right? That presence, uh, to no longer projecting into the future or worrying about the past. You're living in the moment, you know and that's always where life happens. I'm not saying anything we don't all know, but so life does have an intensity, just the sensual, the experiences of the senses seem more vivid. The appreciation of life. It's, um, when you understand that your days aren't certain, that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, then today is a treasure. Today is precious, you know?
There is a certain quality to fear and danger that I had not expected
I know.
before I found myself in this situation. That's really weird. Really, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
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 When you came out, let's say the first time, the first couple of days,
Yeah.
back in what we call reality, how was that?
I had both times the good fortune of passing through Zurich where I give lectures. So I always had this moment of being able to decompress around people who are very supportive, and I would always immediately be able to talk about my experience and what I had seen. But and also Patrick and I had been living out of suitcases for over a year in various places, not by design, but that being back in the United States now um, has been for me quite difficult. Uh, yeah, yeah, I find and the friends that I've made, I have a very good friend from Italy. He just got back from a trip to the West Bank again recently, and he was very good friends with uh, man in a village, a Bedouin village called Al Khair. And this village is right next to the settlement of, I think it's Carmel. And this Bedouin village is under constant attack. In fact, 2 days ago, the IOF went in about 5 o'clock one morning and dug up or cut down all of the village's olive trees, all of them except the few villages that were next to houses. But these were the fields right outside their community center. And a couple months ago, one of their beloved community members, a teacher and also a community activist known by many Israeli activists, by many internationals, was shot and killed. And my friend was not there that day, but he spends a lot of time in a role of protective presence in that community. So I know that people who've been there, there's a bond that happens, and our hearts and our minds are always split. Where they're always Palestine is never off, never out of my heart, and never off my mind. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not going to get easier once you're back from the next trip.
No, because the people I have seen life over the course of the past year getting only harder and harder and harder for my friends there. I told you that one of my friends in the village of Al Mukher, which is just sort of north and east of Berzit and Ramallah, um, his 13 year about 6 months ago, his 13-year-old son had come out of mosque afternoon prayer, and I think just as a kid would, had decided, I'm going to walk down the road to the farmlands. They had 42,000 dunams of land, which is the equivalent of over about 10,500 acres, and all of it has been stolen. And so you can look down at the land, you can look down at the wheat fields that are part of your family, at the vineyards, at the almond trees, at the olive trees, but you can't access it. Well, he walked down the road, 13 years old, and a sniper shot him in the leg. He survived. From the wound, the photos were ghastly. It looks like he tried to blow out his kneecap to leave him amputee, but it missed the kneecap, fortunately. But I mean, it was one of those illegal expanding, what they call butterfly or dum-dum bullets. So they enter and they immediately expand because the point is to do as much damage as possible. I mean,
It's a strategy that the Belgic have already applied in Congo.
yeah,
Yeah, King Leopold, I think he about 2 million. I mix up the numbers now, but there was a systematic chopping off of hands.
That's right.
So because it then takes community effort to care for those people, and that means less effort is available for resistance.
Right.
There's
Right.
a strategy behind this.
It's
Yeah.
strategy. Yeah, no, you're right. It's strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. One of the groups I work with that I've been working with on this kindergarten project I told you about, because as soon as I got back, then I started raising funds for this a playground for a kindergarten in this village I just mentioned of Al Mukher. And one of my partners was is a women's union that was designated. I think it was 2017. There were 6 community civil society organizations that were designated terrorist groups because it destroys the organizations and that shreds the fabric of a community. It shreds the fabric of a community. And they serve mainly rural areas, poor villages with, programs for women, programs for children. And then the people can't associate with them anymore because if they get caught associating with them, you are by association a terrorist. I met a young woman. I'm sorry, are we way over our time here?
I have time if you have time.
Yeah, I have time. I met a woman on my first trip, an amazing young woman. She had just finished a degree in law, and now she's getting a degree in medicine. That's the other thing. Palestinian emphasis on education is remarkable, and Palestinians are highly educated, very sophisticated, very, in some ways, cosmopolitan in that way. Ironic, given that they're stuck in basically the West Bank is like Gaza. It's a large open air concentration camp, right? They can't get out, or very frequently can't. Anyway, she was still going to the University of Berzit, and she was arrested for selling falafel because the student organization that she had been involved was a member of was designated a terrorist organization. She spent 11 months in prison for selling falafel, raising money for a terrorist organization. It defies belief almost.
There's a more sinister side to this designation. Again, coming to the Wolfpack systems, those are artificial intelligence systems in the
Mhm.
background. And I find it already ironic that they call them Wolfpack because this is how the Germans called the U-boats that chased the Americans. Yeah,
Right.
Wolfpacks.
Wolf packs. Wolf
Yeah.
packs.
So
Wolf packs.
I mean, there was one fundamental difference after October the 7th in terms of choosing the targets, because most of it was done with artificial intelligence, which is why in
Right.
the first 3 days there were, I don't want to exaggerate and I don't have the exact number, but there were an exceptionally high amount of targets, exponentially higher as in previous wars, because the
Mhm.
targets, they were all designated by artificial intelligence. And that's the
Lavender.
danger here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the danger here, because once you are designated as a terrorist, your proximity is also
That's right.
designated as a
A
terrorist. Yeah?
terrorist.
And there's artificial intelligence, there's a push on the button, and they're all gone.
Right.
So it's, you know,
Yeah, yeah. This is extraordinarily dangerous, this convergence of high-tech weaponry, surveillance, artificial intelligence. At the same time, on an even more fundamental level, I met, not in person, but through WhatsApp and Signal, a young woman. I can't suddenly remember which country she's from. Anyway, she travels to Palestine and also to the 48 Palestine. You will notice I'm like Palestinians. I don't recognize I no longer recognize the legitimacy of the Zionist entity. So in the 48 Palestine, she travels there. But I spoke with her and I asked her, well, you've met Israelis. I mean, what's and she said their perception of Palestinians is that they're subhuman and that they're basically
yeah,
like animals, that they're dogs.
yes.
And she has friends from that side. She wanted to try, and I could tell she didn't like saying this, but because she wants to find good. And she says it's because, they're afraid. It's because they're ignorant. And this is all true. But you view someone as less than human, you view someone like they're a dog or an animal. Killing them doesn't, what does that mean?
Mm. there's something, again, also here, there's something more sinister behind it. So coming back to Nurit Pelet Hernan, she actually investigated racism in Israeli school books. And the title of the interview, if I'm correct, and this was her words, yeah, the pornography of evil in Israeli school books.
Right.
So she did, so basically Israeli kids are being indoctrinated, sophistically indoctrinated, yeah, from early kindergarten stage on. And then comes the next step. I interviewed Emeritus Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, and he told me that the Israeli army is using religious texts to further indoctrinate
Yes.
their 17, 18, 19-year-old soldiers, which
That's right.
you know, which allows them on a religious level to do what they do in Gaza and the West Bank. So there's a continuum, yeah, from basically after kindergarten on already into the
That's right.
military of full spectrum indoctrination. Again, that's not a justification, but it's an explanation.
Right. And we need to understand because but how? My question for you, this being your area of expertise, how is that indoctrination undone? I have seen. I have a video. I have a video of some settlers harassing, trying to get rid of a Palestinian family, and there were internationals there providing protective presence. And here's the way this happens. The the adult male who's armed with a military issue assault weapon and dressed in military uniform, because all of the settlers are given weapons and uniforms, even
Ben
though he's not.
Gvir gave out tens of thousands of automatic rifles to the settlers not so long ago, a year ago or so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So he's there. He's got two teenage boys with him. He stands back and he lets the teenage boys engage with the Palestinians and engage in the violent behavior with the Palestinians. There's a couple of reasons for this. One is because they're young and they can't possibly be arrested for anything they do because of the age limitations. And two, this is a form of what's called rage baiting. He's standing back, he's waiting because if anything happens, he can shoot, he can call in the IOF. This happens all the time. And so they're treating their young boys, and these are boys, there's all males doing this, like they're attack dogs. They turn their young boys into attack dogs, basically. And you can see in their the faces, I don't even know what it is. It's almost like an automaton, this sort of blank look, but the hatred that they are expressing for the Palestinians. How, Thomas, is that ever undone?
Yeah. Same with traumas. So first of all, the impact. Yeah. So the younger the trauma takes, and again, I compare this virtually with a trauma because it is a traumatic experience.
Yeah,
Also for the perpetrator.
of course.
So the younger the initial trauma takes place, and the more prolonged and repetitive this drama reoccurred, the more difficult it's becoming to get rid of it.
I can't
Right?
hear.
And then I need to repeat. So the
Okay.
question was, how can this be undone? So I compare it to trauma because it is a trauma for those young guys. Yeah. So when a trauma takes place the younger the person is when the trauma takes place, and the repetition, how more often that it is repeated, the more difficult it is to get rid of. And we are talking about years here. It's not only that indoctrination, that's the theoretical part, right? But then there is the actual action, like you said, with those young boys being used as attack dogs. It's a really, yeah. But of course that there's a continuation then in the military. Now,
Yes.
all I can say is I have a couple of my speakers. One of it, Rich Forer, who was an APAC member. And he's not the only one. So I have a handful of speakers, Israeli speakers, who later in life, interestingly, for a variety of reasons, started to wake up. And the interesting part, what I found in all three or four of them was, in between the lines, I could deduct I wouldn't say sadness, but a regret, I think is the better word, that they didn't see it earlier, right? They could have seen it earlier, but they didn't, right? So what's the common denominator here is, because I asked them, so okay, some people have an epiphany. Some people, it's a gradual process. All four of them said, no, it was a gradual process. You know, it's one thing after the other didn't make sense. They started to question it, you know, and this is going to snowball. So the challenge with that approach is I wanted to say it's a passive one, but of course it's not a passive. For the individual person, it's definitely not a passive process, it's an active process. Yeah. But for a group, you're depending on, you would depend on that process. But who has the strength to jump their own rainbow? Who has the strength to question their own life strategy, their own life's vision, you know? So again, something can happen, like, you know, the death of a child, or, you know, that you suddenly question everything. And I don't say that that was the case for Nurit, Pelet, El Hanan, because they were already before that very lucid. Yeah. The short answer to my long rambling here is it takes a lot of effort. And the younger the origin started, the more effort it costs you, because
Of
it's
course,
virtually deprogramming.
it's hardwired. It's
Yeah.
brain wiring at that point, because this is brain damage. This is a kind of brain damage when they're young and the brain is fluid and flexible, right? The patterns are established, right? Fear based
This is
and
so true, and it's
yeah,
physically true. It's a
that's right.
physical process in the brain.
That's right.
Neural paths are created, which are
Yeah,
physical structures in our brain. The more often you have a certain thought, I
yeah,
compare it with a, you know, there's a small path in the grass.
that's right.
Now, over time, this path becomes wider and wider, and at the end, you have a highway. Yeah,
That's right.
this is how our
Yeah.
thoughts change the physical structure of our brain. And once it's so ingrained, it's very difficult to get rid of it.
It's difficult, but not
Yeah,
impossible, because the brain is
exactly.
fluid. The brain is fluid,
Yeah,
and you can override that. You can,
with conscious
but
effort.
with conscious effort, but it takes repetition in the same way that those original paths were formed. Anyway,
Yeah, a very lively discussion in an unexpected direction.
I know. I know. I was sitting here thinking,
Okay. Cara. So first of all, MariAnna, Cara. So
it's Cara
you have,
MariAnna. Cara
sorry,
MariAnna.
Cara Maya, and
Mhm.
this is your name, Cara MariAnna, as in second name, not.
Correct, correct. Mariana is the
Oh,
second name.
so
Yeah, but
basically you have three names, Cara MariAnna.
yeah,
I like
yes.
it,
Thank
Cara
you.
MariAnna. It's very beautiful. It sounds kind of almost Italian or so. I don't know. I see sun and coffee and beach.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Yeah, well, it was a name I chose for myself, the Mariana. Yeah, it was
Okay,
an add-on.
okay. Before we conclude our session, are there any topics that are close to your heart that we didn't scratch on? And probably there are plenty, yeah, but something comes to mind?
Yeah, not not really. I mean, this people can go into, and I'm sure you'll put links. People can go into my Substack sites and read the Palestinian Voices essays, where they will read about Samia and Mazin Kimsiya and Ratab, the former prisoner that I interviewed, and various people, and then the West Bank alerts. That's more a little more traditional reporting on things that are happening.
Yes, and I would like to point out that I would like to point out the obvious. You said at the beginning you're a writer. That means if you read, I mean, I read some of your articles.
Mhm.
You write like a professional writer. I mean, this is storytelling par excellence. Yeah, so it's not just, you know, some
Oh,
blog. Yeah, so I
right.
strongly recommend viewers to, because it's an experience. You make the reading an experience.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay. Cara MariAnna, it was my pleasure talking to you. You will hear from me again.
Thank you.
Thank you. If this conversation left you uneasy, good. I said it before. It's supposed to. Because what's happening out there isn't some distant tragedy. It's a mirror. It shows us what we tolerate, what we look away from, what we justify when it's convenient. So before you scroll to the next thing, take a moment. Ask yourself what silence costs. Ask what it means when people who still dare to speak, like Cara, stand almost alone. And if you want to keep following the breadcrumbs the headlines won't touch, the truth that makes power uncomfortable, you'll find them on my Substack. That's where the noise ends and the real story begins. Thanks for watching, and remember, always look beyond the headlines. Over and out.